Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Patmos. It is February 19th, 2026. Today I want to talk about dealing with vaccine hesitancy. I have a little bit of a contrarian point of view on this. And if you look below, you'll see the article that prompted me to uh, make this video today. And it talks about vaccine hesitancy for COVID is rooted in deep seated vaccine hesitancy. And it talks about ways to try to deal with this. Now, the issue of vaccine hesitancy has been around as long as I've been a doctor, and probably before that. I remember dealing with vaccine hesitant patients 45 and 50 years ago when I first went into the healthcare arena. So it's not a new problem, but it has gotten steadily worse. And today we now see vaccine hesitancy is a major public health problem. Because of vaccine hesitancy, we have places like in South Carolina, where in some parts only 20% of children are vaccinated against measles, and they're now suffering a massive measles epidemic with kids hospitalized with measles encephalitis. I got news for you. Those children may not ever fully recover. Anyhow, there's been a lot written about and spoken about with vaccine hesitancy. And many very well intentioned, excellent experts talk about how to talk to the vaccine hesitant individual, the parent or the consumer, the healthcare consumer who has vaccine hesitancy, and how we mustn't, and I agree, we mustn't chastise them or shame them or blame them. We have to listen and be empathetic and try to explain in a positive way to deal with them. That's not my focus on dealing with vaccine hesitancy. The public, the parents, the individuals who believe that this vaccine, anti-vaccine stuff, are victims. Um, they're not perpetrators. They shouldn't be treated as if they're guilty. They have been infused with false information. My point, and what the point I've been making for years now, is that in order to deal with vaccine hesitancy, we have to get at the source, at the root of where the vaccine misinformation and disinformation is coming from in the first place. It must be a vaccine hesitant person. It is, but I'll call them back. Anyhow, we have to deal with the root cause of the problem. People, average consumers, lay people, parents, your neighbors, your friends who are not healthcare professionals, they don't become vaccine hesitant out of thin air. They don't get vaccine hesitant. It doesn't fall out of the atmosphere into your brain. You become vaccine hesitant because you've been given false information. And you don't realize it's false. You're given information. It just happens to be false information, but it's delivered by someone that you trust, someone that you think is an expert. And there's the problem. I have been studying, researching, vetting, doing primary source verification, second reviews of the vaccine experts that are out there giving vaccine information, and have fact checked their resumes. And I can tell you without question, most of them are cranks. Most of them are frauds. They have false information on their resumes. Their resumes are embellished, exaggerated, even in some cases, fabricated. And they are knowingly spreading false information because they can get away with it. And they do it because they make money doing so. Normally, what they do is they tie the false information to some product that they're trying to sell, a wellness kit that contains whatever. Or they're building an online fan base on YouTube with lots of, or Substack, with lots of subscribers, and they're making money off of it. You can make a lot of money if you have a lot of subscribers. Now, I do this Substack, but I don't even ask for payment. I don't care. I don't do this for money. I do this because I'm passionate about correct information. So And anyhow, these anti-vax uh, experts, fake experts, are spreading misinformation. Now, they don't like the word misinformation because they want to hide behind, well, it's freedom of speech. No, if you're a medical professional, you are obligated to share correct information. If you are a healthcare professional, nurse, doctor, and you spread information that you know or should know is incorrect, you are violating the Medical Practice Act and you're guilty of unprofessional conduct. And you should and can be disciplined for that. Think of it this way: spreading misinformation is no different than pouring poison into the public water supply. If someone came along and put poison in the public water system, or poison in your food, or somehow, uh, introduced some deadly product, anthrax in an envelope, in a large scale public way, that's a criminal act. Well, spreading misinformation is exactly analogous. When a healthcare provider, a doctor or a nurse, or some other person who should be a credible authority, puts false information into the public domain, they have put out poison. And that poison isn't just information, it actually results in harm. We now see people die. 300,000 to 400,000 Americans died needlessly during COVID because they simply refused vaccination. Why? Because they were given misinformation. So, my point today is that we will never deal effectively with vaccine hesitancy just by trying to talk to vaccine hesitant people and answer their questions and be empathetic and try to provide trusted, be a trusted source of information. That's great. I'm not disparaging that approach at all. That approach is fine. It's welcome. I think it's wonderful. But that's not where my focus is. My focus is on going after the sources of the misinformation, those sources who are professionals, licensed individuals who are under the auspices of the Medical Practice Act and who are obligated as a matter of law, ethics, and morality only to share correct information. And knowingly sharing misinformation or disinformation for profit or for personal self aggrandizement is unprofessional conduct and needs to be dealt with from a disciplinary point of view. That's my focus. You can't solve this problem unless you cut the head off the snake. And what is the head of the snake? The head of the snake is those handful of people around the world, and there's not that many of them, there's 20 or 30 of them, who are responsible for most of what is the misinformation that's out there. Some years ago, there was an article called "The Disinformation Dozen." Well, there's more, and it listed 12 major people responsible for most misinformation, but there's more than that. I can tell you about 20 or 30 people who are primarily responsible for most of the misinformation that is out there. Some of them are doctors and they're licensed and they have fabricated credentials on their CVs. If we're going to ever deal with this problem effectively, we've got to get at them. And you say, well, this is a freedom of speech. No, it's not a freedom of speech issue. Physicians, medical practitioners under the law, are required to spread correct information. If you have a personal opinion, you can express your personal opinion, but not as an expert. If you're an expert, you have to share the correct information. Now, you might say, well, how do we know what information is correct? That's a very good point. Science is always evolving. Things in medicine change by the day. That's why we have tools like UpToDate to keep us up to date on what the current best evidence is. As a physician, I am obligated, other physicians are obligated to share current best evidence from the peer-reviewed medical literature. That's what we share. Anything else is unprofessional conduct. I am calling for criminalization of healthcare providers who knowingly share misinformation, who do not comply with their moral, legal, and ethical obligation under the Medical Practice Act only to share correct information. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say a doctor went on cable news and started advocating that if you get exposed, if you get bit by a rabid bat, don't bother getting that, the rabies treatment, the rabies vaccine post-exposure profile. Don't even bother with that. What would you say about that? You would say, "Oh my God, that's outrageous! How could any doctor make that kind of recommendation?" And you'd be right. If a doctor did that, I am sure there would be enough complaints that they would be sanctioned and disciplined by their medical board if they're a licensed provider. This is no different. Giving misinformation about vaccines is just as bad as going on TV and saying don't prophylax against exposure to rabies. It's insane. We have to deal with the source. The public is being fed incorrect information. They don't know. They're responding to what they see on social media. It is our duty as leaders and as regulators to control the information that gets out there. When it comes to medical information, we must be sure that only correct information is circulated. We must not allow incorrect information to be promulgated by fake experts. That's just like putting poison in the water. That's my point for today. You may not like it, but I think we need to cut the head off the snake.